Okay, let's dive right into this explainer. Today, we're unpacking something totally fascinating and honestly a little terrifying. We are talking about the invisible puppeteer. We'll be looking at the exact anatomy of a mastermind based on source material that basically breaks down the raw mechanics of dark psychology. How do some people manage to completely defeat their enemies without making a sound or even lifting a finger? Well, let's decode this highly calculated mindset together. Have you ever been defeated without even realizing it? Oof, it's kind of a chilling question to ask yourself, isn't it? But the source text we're looking at highlights these incredibly rare, highly dangerous individuals it calls manipulative geniuses. Just imagine someone who can subtly steer outcomes so well that they literally have the whole world dancing on the tip of their fingers and nobody even knows they're doing it. The material makes it clear this isn't magic. It's a very real, meticulous blend of dark psychology and highly effective strategies. Section 1, the perfect mask, concealing true intentions. Let's get into it. So this brings us to the absolute golden rule of manipulation from our source. A mastermind never lets anyone see their real desires. There is a major contrast to keep in mind here. On the outside, you've got this fake persona. Harmless, super friendly, totally trustworthy. But then there's the inner mind. While you're chatting with this seemingly nice person, internally, they are running a million calculations. They're reading your emotions, and they're scanning for your weak spots. Because if anyone actually figured out the true intentions hiding underneath, boom, the mastermind's plans are completely ruined. And because of that massive risk, the source explicitly tells manipulators, share as little as possible. The logic is pretty bulletproof. The fewer people who know what you're actually up to, the more power and adaptability you keep for yourself. It's all about mirroring. The mastermind builds trust by simply reflecting the emotions and desires of whoever is standing right in front of them. So you end up feeling deeply understood, while their actual agenda, yeah, that stays completely hidden in the shadows. The source actually brings up a brilliant example of this from anime history to really drive the point home: Light Yagami. If you know the show, on paper, this guy is the ultimate role model. He's a brilliant student, universally seen as responsible, intelligent, sincere, totally law-abiding. But he uses that flawless, highly ethical exterior as an impenetrable mask. It gives him the perfect cover to completely hide a dark, incredibly calculating interior and just effortlessly win the absolute trust of everyone around him. Section 2. The weapon of words, planting subtle doubt. Now, physical actions and big grand schemes, that's really only part of the equation. True psychological influence relies hugely on mastering language. The source breaks down these verbal tactics, and it's fascinating. Masterminds know that talking too much actually kills their impact. So instead, they use very short, extremely powerful lines. These brief little sentences act as indirect suggestions that emotionally trigger the target. The goal isn't to force you into anything, it's just to plant a tiny seed of doubt and curiosity. They don't tell you what to think, they just drop a quick comment that makes you completely second-guess what you already believe. To show us how this works, the material points to another absolutely chilling anime character, Johann Liebert, who's often described as one of the most terrifyingly manipulative figures ever written. His go-to tactic? It's almost never a long, persuasive speech. It's usually just a single, perfectly timed line, something like, "You think?" Just offering those two simple words at the exact right second completely bypasses logical defenses. It instantly sparks immense fear and second-guessing. Here's another crazy effective verbal tool from the text. Just imagine you're confiding in someone, telling them a secret, and instead of being supportive, they reply with this slightly detached question. "You're really sorry about that?" Catch that? Just repeating a statement back as a subtle question shifts your entire mindset. It forces you to look inward, instantly creating crippling doubt about your own feelings. And it's all based on just a few carefully chosen words. But hey, it's not just the words themselves, it's the delivery. The source defines psychological dominance here as maintaining a completely calm and composed tone. Truly powerful people, they don't show overexcitement and they never show desperation. Remaining totally steady creates this immediate, almost gravitational dynamic of dominance over the listener. Your tone of voice is literally just as vital as the words you're saying. Section 3. The Mastermind's Playbook. The core methodology. All right, so now that we get the mask and the vocabulary, let's look at how this all builds into an active game. The source outlines the core methodology manipulative geniuses use to draw people in. And honestly, the structure is frighteningly simple. It moves systematically through 3 steps. Step 1, observe. Step 2, influence. And finally, step 3, control. It's this overarching process that turns quiet, passive observation into total psychological command over someone else. Let's drill down into that very first stage. A true manipulator always observes before they ever make a move, and they're watching for highly specific things. They want to identify your exact emotional triggers. They take mental notes on what makes you feel insecure. They figure out if you're a logical thinker or if you run on impulse. And most importantly, they are hunting for your biggest unfulfilled need. Like, do you have a desperate need for attention, a craving for respect, validation? They gather all of this intelligence before doing a single thing. Which brings us to the influence stage. This entire step is driven by one absolute rule from the text. People make decisions emotionally, not logically. It's a game changer. The mastermind knows that if they can just control your emotional weak points, your ultimate decisions are basically sitting right in the palms of their hands. So once they've spotted those weak points, they start slowly pushing your emotional buttons. The source contrasts two specific triggers they use. On one hand, you have the flattery technique. This is where they artificially boost your ego to win your favor and trust. Then on the flip side, you have the darker guilt trip technique, which actually weaponizes your deepest insecurities to force you to comply. Both of these tactics are entirely about manipulating your emotional state to shift your behavior. Here is the absolutely crucial takeaway. Flawless manipulation happens when the target genuinely says to themselves, "I'm making this decision myself." That is the ultimate goal of the control stage right there. The target genuinely believes they're operating with total freedom, completely oblivious to the fact that their choices have been meticulously curated by someone else behind the scenes. And how exactly do they pull off that illusion? Well, they use what the text calls the false choice strategy. This means offering a person two seemingly different options. The target weighs them, picks one, and feels totally empowered. But the reality, both of those options ultimately benefit the manipulator anyway. It's the perfect way to create the illusion of free will, while secretly and inevitably pushing the target exactly where the mastermind wants them. Section 4, the double-edged sword, the cost of power. Now, what's really interesting is that the source material doesn't just give us a how-to guide. It ends with a very stark warning about the realities of using these psychological tactics in the real world. The source material actually frames manipulation strictly as a weapon. Yes, for sure, when used with precision, it can bring massive power and success. But power without control is like a wildfire. If left unchecked, or if it's driven purely by ego, these exact same tactics will lead to total self-destruction. They'll either burn the world around you, or they'll completely consume you. To avoid that kind of self-destruction, the source outlines some final, non-negotiable rules for anyone attempting to play this game. You absolutely must maintain a strict, objective balance between your emotions and your strategy. You have to stay hyper-vigilant so the thrill of power doesn't start controlling your actions. You must always remain in control of the power itself. Ultimately, the advice here is simple. Play smart and stay grounded. As we wrap up this explainer, the source material kind of leaves us looking in the mirror. Seeing the anatomy of a mastermind laid out like this really exposes how vulnerable human psychology actually is and how easily we can be steered by a silent puppeteer. But if you do choose to learn these tools, you're left with one final, pretty profound question about the true cost of psychological dominance. Are you controlling the power, or is the power ultimately controlling you?